Reggie, a 40-years-old black man, was fired from his job by his racist manager, Mr. Richard Lanning. But just a year later, Reggie came back strong and bought the company. Now what do you think he'll do to Mr. Richard? First, let's go to how it all started. It was a beautiful morning. Reggie sat in the plush office chair, feeling the tension simmer in the air as he faced his CEO, Richard Lanning. This meeting wasn't what he had expected. Just hours earlier, Reggie had spoken up about a company policy that was blatantly unfair to minority employees. He had approached Lanning with genuine hope for dialogue, believing that reason and openness would lead to change. But as Lanning sat across from him now, arms crossed and jaw set, Reggie knew that he had miscalculated. Lanning's voice was icy and controlled, but his words carried a heavy, unspoken message. "Reggie," he began, "we appreciate your concerns, but I don't think you understand how things work around here. This is a company that values unity and productivity, and it seems you've become somewhat of a distraction." The thinly veiled insult cut deep, but Reggie held his ground, feeling his pulse quicken. He knew that his feedback was valid and that it wasn't just him who was affected. Yet as Lanning's comments grew more pointed, sliding into condescending remarks about Reggie's place in the company, it became painfully clear that his voice wasn't welcome. With each word, Lanning's tone grew colder. "Honestly, Reggie, I think it's best we part ways. You don't seem to fit the culture we're building here," he concluded, making no effort to hide his disdain. Reggie's heart sank. Fired. Just like that. After years of dedication, his contributions reduced to nothing, his integrity questioned, all because he had dared to speak up. He felt a surge of anger and disbelief, but above all, a deep sense of betrayal. He had poured his energy and skill into this company, believing he could make a difference. But in Lanning's eyes, he was disposable. As Reggie left the office, the reality of his situation hit hard. He was the primary breadwinner, with a family relying on him, and now, with his reputation tarnished by Lanning's subtle smear, his career felt uncertain. Stepping out of the building he once felt proud to work in, Reggie walked away feeling crushed but determined. He had lost his job, but he hadn't lost his principles. And deep down, he knew this was just the beginning of a new chapter. In the weeks following his dismissal, Reggie found himself adrift. The phone calls he made to potential employers were met with polite declines, and the doors that had once been open seemed firmly shut. Word had spread quickly in the industry. Reggie was a troublemaker, someone who had challenged the wrong person. His reputation, carefully built over years of dedication, had been reduced to a single label. The whispers were quiet but effective, and the offers he had hoped for simply didn't come. His savings, meant for emergencies, were rapidly depleting, and each dwindling dollar only added to the weight he felt pressing down on him. Driven by a need to provide for his family, Reggie took odd jobs wherever he could, working long hours in anything from temporary office gigs to warehouse shifts, swallowing his pride for the sake of his wife and children. The financial strain was tangible, but it was the emotional toll that truly wore him down. Every time he returned home to his family, his wife's supportive smile, his children's trusting eyes, it cut deep, reminding him of his responsibility to them. He couldn't bear the thought of letting them down, but the frustration and helplessness gnawed at him. On tough days, his friends and family rallied around him, lifting his spirits and reminding him of his worth. His wife often sat with him late into the night, holding his hand and offering words of encouragement. "You're strong, Reggie," she'd say softly. "What happened wasn't fair, but you'll find a way. I believe in you." Despite their support, a bitter anger simmered within him. The injustice of being cast aside, labeled for trying to do what was right, made it hard to shake off the resentment he felt. But as he looked at his family, Reggie knew he couldn't afford to let bitterness consume him. He began channeling his energy into finding new paths, determined to prove his worth and rebuild his life. Every odd job, every late-night search for opportunities, became fuel for his resolve. His path was uncertain, but Reggie was driven by a promise to himself. This wasn't how his story would end. Reggie knew that to move forward, he couldn't let his dismissal, and the labels that came with it, define him. With his family's encouragement, he took a hard look at his skills and began considering how he could put them to use independently. If the traditional doors were shut, he would find a new way forward, creating his own path. He started freelancing, offering his expertise to small businesses and startups. At first, the work was inconsistent, and he struggled to secure projects. But Reggie treated every new client as an opportunity to prove himself, giving his best work, meeting every deadline, and delivering results that exceeded expectations. Word of his commitment spread among his clients, and slowly, his reputation began to rebuild, but this time on his own terms. As his client base grew, so did his confidence. Reggie immersed himself in learning, taking online courses to hone his skills and stay competitive in the fast-paced industry. Each new certification, each positive client review, became a reminder that he was more than the narrow label Lanning had branded him with. He was capable, resilient, and deserving of success. Whenever doubt crept in, Reggie reminded himself of his family and the promise he had made to himself. He held on to the thought of proving Lanning wrong, using it as fuel to keep pushing forward. With each project, he felt a growing sense of purpose, realizing that he was building something for himself, something no one could take away. The journey was slow, but Reggie began to see a future beyond his previous job, one defined by his own hard work and integrity. The setbacks he'd faced were becoming stepping stones, and with each passing day, his resolve deepened. Reggie wasn't just surviving. He was reclaiming his life, brick by brick, with a resilience that was his alone. Just as Reggie was finding his rhythm in the freelance world, an unexpected call brought an intriguing twist. His former mentor, Mr. Hughes, someone he hadn't spoken to in years, reached out with a proposition. Mr. Hughes had been following Reggie's progress from afar and was impressed by the resilience he'd shown since his departure from Lanning's company. Over coffee, Mr. Hughes shared his vision for a new startup he was advising, one with a focus on innovative tech solutions for small businesses. Reggie, he began with a smile. This company has the potential to shake things up, and I see someone like you leading part of it. Your experience, your insight, those are assets we could really use. Reggie listened intently, feeling the spark of a familiar excitement he hadn't felt in a long time. Mr. Hughes was offering him a chance to invest and take a hands-on role, guiding the startup's growth. It was a risk, but one that resonated deeply with Reggie. He saw in this opportunity not only a potential path back to success, but a way to rebuild his professional reputation on his own terms. With unwavering determination, Reggie decided to go all in. He pooled his savings, even pulling from his freelancing income, and poured everything he had into the startup. His leap of faith didn't go unnoticed. Investors began to take an interest, drawn not only by the startup's potential but by Reggie's story and the commitment he brought to every project. His work ethic and vision became rallying points, building the foundation of trust and excitement needed to fuel the company's early stages. As the startup gained momentum, Reggie found himself reinvigorated, thriving in a role that allowed him to shape something from the ground up. The long hours and late nights didn't faze him. This time, he was working toward a vision that felt personal, a future he was building with his own hands. And for the first time since leaving Lanning's company, Reggie felt the taste of redemption on the horizon. The startup, once just an ambitious idea, began to flourish under Reggie's leadership. As he poured his heart and expertise into the venture, his role within the company grew, evolving from a hands-on contributor to a guiding force behind the company's vision. His insight and industry experience became invaluable assets, allowing the startup to navigate complex challenges with clarity and purpose. With each successful quarter, the company's growth attracted more attention. Reggie's strategic thinking and problem-solving skills quickly set the startup apart in the market, and clients trusted his honest, innovative approach. The team saw him not only as a leader but as a mentor, someone who had overcome significant setbacks and who understood both the technical and human sides of the business. As the startup's success became undeniable, the board took notice, and Reggie gained a seat at the table. Investors began to recognize his potential, valuing the integrity and resilience he brought to his role. He forged connections with influential figures in the industry, people who admired his tenacity and respected the impact he was making. Reggie's success story was quickly spreading, and with each new investor and partnership, he felt a quiet satisfaction. He had rebuilt his career through grit, skill, and dedication, and he'd done it on his terms. And as he watched the company's rapid expansion, he knew this was just the beginning. Reggie's journey was far from over, and with his reputation solidified and his network growing, he sensed that an even greater opportunity was on the horizon, one that would lead him back to the place where it had all begun. Reggie was at a bustling industry conference, networking and meeting potential partners for the startup, when he saw a familiar figure across the room. Richard Lanning stood among a small crowd, his presence commanding as always, talking with the same confidence that Reggie remembered from their last interaction. Reggie felt his pulse quicken. He hadn't seen Lanning since that fateful day in the office, and though time had passed, the memory of Lanning's words still lingered like a scar. As Reggie moved through the crowd, Lanning's gaze landed on him, a flash of recognition crossing his face. "Reggie," he greeted, his voice dripping with mock cordiality. "I heard you're still around." Quite the surprise. Lanning's smirk hinted at something condescending, and Reggie could tell he hadn't followed his recent successes. "Yes, I am," Reggie replied evenly, maintaining his composure. "I've been working on a new venture, something that's growing pretty quickly." Lanning chuckled, giving a dismissive wave. "Oh, startups," he said, his tone dismissive. "A nice little passion project, I'm sure. But, they don't all make it. Tough industry out there." He looked at Reggie with that same smug expression, clearly unaware of the progress Reggie's company had made or the reputation he was building. Reggie's jaw tightened, but he felt something other than anger, a deep, quiet resolve. In this moment, he saw the stark contrast between who he had been back then, a man desperately seeking validation, and who he was now, someone carving his own path, fueled by resilience and a vision far greater than Lanning could ever understand. "Thanks for the advice," Reggie replied, his voice calm but firm. "We're actually doing pretty well, expanding faster than expected. Turns out there's room for a company that values people and innovation." He met Lanning's gaze without flinching, feeling the power of his own confidence in each word. Lanning's smile faded slightly, his eyes narrowing. For the first time, he seemed to register Reggie's confidence as something real, something he hadn't expected. As the conversation ended, Reggie felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over him. This encounter was a reminder of how far he'd come, and it strengthened his determination to succeed. Surpassing Lanning's influence wasn't just a personal goal. It was a way of proving, to himself and to everyone watching, that integrity and vision could triumph over arrogance and prejudice. Walking away from the exchange, Reggie felt a surge of energy, the interaction only fueling his ambition. He was no longer intimidated by Lanning's presence or haunted by the past. Reggie had outgrown the man who had once dismissed him, and he was now setting his sights on a future that went far beyond anything Lanning could ever imagine. Reggie's startup was gaining momentum that even he hadn't anticipated. With each passing month, the company's influence grew, and his name became known among the major players in the industry. Investors who had once ignored his calls were now reaching out, eager to be part of the rapid success story Reggie had built from the ground up. Reggie used his newfound influence strategically, targeting partnerships and investors who aligned with his vision for a more inclusive, innovative business environment. He secured critical deals with companies that shared his values, creating partnerships that strengthened his company's presence and reputation. This approach paid off, not only bringing in more capital, but also establishing a network of support that amplified his startup's reach. Each strategic move positioned his company as a rising force, and soon, it was no longer a small player. It was a serious competitor. Reggie's success attracted the attention of seasoned industry giants, many of whom viewed him as a fresh, formidable presence capable of challenging the traditional power structures. His company became known for its groundbreaking work, attracting talent that was eager to work under a leader who valued integrity and respected his team's contributions. Word spread quickly, and the industry began to notice that Reggie's startup wasn't just a passing trend. It was reshaping the landscape. It wasn't long before Reggie's achievements reached the ears of Richard Lanning. This time, however, there was no mocking smirk or dismissive laugh. Lanning's company had lost clients to Reggie's startup, and his board was taking note. For the first time, Reggie's old employer was feeling the impact of his success, and the thought filled Reggie with a quiet, satisfied pride. As his startup continued to grow, Reggie knew he was on the path to something monumental. What had begun as a fight for his own career had transformed into a vision that was lifting others, challenging industry standards, and positioning his company as a genuine competitor to Lanning's empire. And as he looked toward the future, Reggie felt a powerful resolve, ready to continue rising and proving that integrity and vision could reshape an entire industry. While Reggie's startup continued to soar, the once dominant company run by Richard Lanning was struggling. Sales had been on a steady decline, with clients increasingly dissatisfied with the outdated practices that Lanning refused to modernize. His resistance to change had left the company stagnant, while the whispers of discriminatory policies further damaged its reputation. Employees, many of whom had tolerated a rigid, toxic work culture, began to leave for opportunities at more inclusive, innovative companies, many even joining Reggie's thriving startup. Reggie soon caught wind of Lanning's troubles. He'd heard from former colleagues about the company's internal chaos, and the news circulated among industry insiders. Lanning's empire was crumbling. The idea stirred something in Reggie. He thought back to that day in Lanning's office, the way he'd been dismissed and demeaned, and a vision began to form in his mind, one that was as much about justice as it was about business. Quietly, Reggie started exploring the possibilities. Acquiring Lanning's company would be a personal victory, a full-circle moment that would transform his career from one of victimization to triumph. But it was also a strategic opportunity. Lanning's company still had assets, infrastructure, and industry presence that Reggie could turn around, aligning them with his own values to create a truly progressive force in the industry. Over the next few weeks, Reggie began assembling a plan. He tapped into his growing network of investors and supporters, sharing his vision for what the acquisition could mean, not just for him but for the industry as a whole. His vision resonated with many who had long wanted to see Lanning's influence replaced by a leader with integrity and a commitment to positive change. As Reggie moved forward, a sense of purpose drove him. He knew that this was about more than simply buying a company. It was about reclaiming his story, setting a new standard for leadership, and creating a legacy that would stand as a testament to resilience and integrity. With his plan firmly in place, Reggie made his move. He gathered his team of advisors, lawyers, and investors, crafting a bold acquisition proposal aimed directly at Lanning's floundering company. The offer was clear, calculated, and, to those in the industry, nothing short of audacious. News of the proposal spread quickly, creating a buzz among business insiders. Here was the same man Lanning had once dismissed and discarded, now poised to take over his former employer's company. When the proposal landed on Lanning's desk, his reaction was explosive. The very idea that Reggie, a man he'd once labeled a troublemaker, was now in a position to buy him out was unfathomable. Lanning rejected the offer outright, furious at the audacity of it, determined to keep Reggie at bay. But Lanning's company's board saw things differently. With sales in decline, a tarnished public image, and employees leaving in droves, they knew they couldn't afford to let personal pride interfere with the company's survival. The board, desperate for a solution, arranged a meeting with Reggie to discuss the proposal further. Despite Lanning's protests, they agreed that Reggie's success, reputation, and progressive vision might be just what the company needed to pull it out of the downward spiral. They couldn't ignore that Reggie's startup was thriving, that clients respected his integrity, and that his company had captured the future of an industry where Lanning's approach had failed. When the day of the meeting arrived, Reggie walked into the boardroom with calm confidence. Lanning sat across the table, his face flushed with anger, while the board members watched Reggie with a mix of curiosity and reluctant respect. Reggie presented his vision for the company's turnaround, emphasizing innovation, inclusivity, and ethical practices. It was a direct challenge to everything Lanning's company had previously stood for, but Reggie's vision resonated with the board. They knew he could breathe new life into the company, transform its image, and restore its standing in the industry. As the meeting wrapped up, it was clear that Lanning's resistance was losing ground. Reggie had not only presented a lifeline for the company, but a clear path to the future, a future in which he would be at the helm. The board, now keenly aware of the potential for a new beginning, began seriously considering Reggie's proposal, leaving Lanning with little choice but to face the possibility of watching the company he had built fall into the hands of the very person he had once dismissed. For Reggie, this was more than just a business negotiation. It was a moment of redemption, a chance to reclaim his narrative and shape a legacy built on resilience, vision, and integrity. The boardroom was thick with tension as Reggie took his seat across from Richard Lanning and the company's board members. A mix of emotions filled the room: skepticism from some board members, intrigue from others, and a barely concealed resentment from Lanning. But Reggie's presence was calm and assured, a stark contrast to Lanning's growing discomfort. The lead board member cleared his throat and addressed Reggie. "Mr. Owens, we've reviewed your proposal, and it's clear that your vision aligns with much of what we're seeking for the company's future. However, we have questions about the terms and how you plan to achieve such rapid restructuring." Reggie nodded, ready for the challenge. "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "My goal isn't just to take over. It's to lead a transformation. This company has a strong foundation but has lost its footing due to outdated practices. With targeted changes in management and culture, we can regain the trust of clients and attract top talent." Lanning shifted in his seat, clearly irritated. He cut in, "With all due respect, Reggie, this company isn't some project you can transform overnight. There's a lot you don't understand about managing a business of this scale." Reggie met Lanning's gaze, unfazed. "Mr. Lanning, I understand that change is challenging, especially for those who are invested in the past. But I believe that my success with my own company speaks for itself. This isn't just about business. It's about building a culture that's ready to meet the future." Lanning's jaw tightened, the words stinging. Reggie held his ground, keeping his focus on the board members, who seemed increasingly engaged by his vision. He laid out his conditions confidently: a hands-on role as CEO, the freedom to appoint his own team, and a commitment to modernize the company's policies from top to bottom. As the discussions continued, Lanning grew visibly uncomfortable, realizing just how much ground he was losing. Each term Reggie proposed was met with approval from the board, his confidence and clarity swaying even those who had initially been skeptical. Reggie wasn't here to be deferential. He held the upper hand, and everyone in the room knew it. The lead board member leaned forward, nodding thoughtfully. "Mr. Owens, we believe you may be exactly what this company needs," he said, casting a glance at Lanning, whose face had turned pale. "Let's proceed with your terms and finalize this agreement." Reggie's heart pounded with satisfaction, but he kept his face neutral, nodding with quiet determination. He had reclaimed his power, standing firm and proving his worth in the very place he had once been dismissed. In that moment, Reggie knew he was no longer at the mercy of Lanning's judgment. He was in control, steering his own destiny and the future of the company that had once underestimated him. It wasn't long before word of Reggie's impending acquisition of Lanning's company hit the headlines. The story spread like wildfire, igniting interest across social media, news outlets, and industry publications. Reporters dug into Reggie's journey, unearthing the story of his initial firing and the discrimination he'd faced at Lanning's hands. It didn't take long for the public to seize upon the story, a narrative of resilience, justice, and poetic revenge that captivated audiences everywhere. Articles poured out, casting Reggie as a symbol of grit and perseverance. Business leaders and influencers praised him publicly, commending his rise from a wrongful dismissal to a powerful acquisition. The industry watched in awe, recognizing his journey as not only remarkable, but also a reminder of what was possible when integrity and talent triumphed over prejudice. Meanwhile, the spotlight on Richard Lanning was far from flattering. Journalists uncovered complaints of outdated practices, highlighting employee experiences of a toxic, exclusionary work culture. Former colleagues stepped forward anonymously, sharing their stories of Lanning's oppressive management style, painting him as a symbol of the industry's worst flaws. The narrative was clear. Lanning's refusal to adapt and his history of discriminatory practices had not only stalled his company but left it vulnerable to the very person he'd once dismissed. The public's support for Reggie swelled as people shared the story, applauding his rise as a powerful counter-narrative to the culture Lanning represented. Reggie became a hero of sorts, a role model for young professionals, and a beacon of hope for those who had faced similar obstacles. Job seekers and rising talent were drawn to his company, eager to work under a leader who understood the power of resilience, inclusivity, and respect. Reggie, though humbled by the overwhelming support, stayed focused on his goal. He knew the real work lay ahead, transforming the company's culture and setting new standards that others could follow. But he couldn't deny the deep sense of satisfaction that came with watching his story inspire others. The news of the acquisition marked a turning point not just for him, but for an industry that was beginning to rethink its own values. As the news continued to ripple outward, Reggie felt a renewed commitment to his journey. His story was no longer just his own. It had become a story of change, inspiring a new wave of leaders who believed in building a future defined by respect, innovation, and resilience. As Reggie's story spread, his community rallied around him with pride and admiration. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out, moved by his journey from adversity to triumph. People from all walks of life began to see Reggie not just as a business success story, but as a role model, someone who had faced discrimination and setbacks yet rose above them with integrity, perseverance, and a commitment to making things right. Local organizations invited him to speak at events, asking him to share his experiences with young people and professionals. Reggie accepted, eager to use his story to inspire others. Standing before packed auditoriums and classrooms, he spoke openly about the struggles he had faced, the resilience he had found, and the power of staying true to one's values. His words resonated deeply with his audiences, many of whom had faced similar obstacles in their own lives. The community's support energized Reggie, filling him with a sense of purpose that went beyond the acquisition. He saw in their encouragement an opportunity to bring real, lasting change to an industry often dominated by outdated practices and rigid hierarchies. His journey was no longer just about proving himself or securing his family's future. It was about paving the way for a new generation, about breaking down barriers and creating opportunities for those who had been marginalized or dismissed. With this wave of community support behind him, Reggie felt more empowered than ever. The weight of his responsibility was clear. He wasn't just changing the direction of a company. He was setting a new standard for leadership, one rooted in empathy, inclusivity, and resilience. His community had given him the strength to keep going, and he was determined to use that strength to create an environment where others could thrive. As Reggie looked out at the faces of those cheering him on, he felt a deep gratitude and a powerful resolve. He knew he had the chance to bring positive change to an industry that needed it, and that, with the support of his community, he could make a difference that would resonate far beyond the walls of his own company. After weeks of intense negotiations, Reggie's moment finally arrived. The board of Lanning's company had weighed his offer carefully, and with declining profits and a tarnished reputation, they realized that Reggie's vision was the company's best, and perhaps only, chance for revival. In a private board meeting, they voted unanimously to accept his proposal, formally handing over the reins to the man who had once been cast aside. As Reggie signed the final paperwork, a wave of accomplishment washed over him. It was surreal to sit in the very boardroom where he had once been dismissed, now poised to take over a company that he would reshape from the inside out. For Reggie, this was more than just a business transaction. It was a powerful reclamation of his journey, his integrity, and his vision for a better, fairer industry. Richard Lanning sat across the table, forced to witness the handover of his legacy to the very man he'd dismissed. His face was a mix of anger and humiliation, his once commanding presence reduced to silent bitterness. The weight of his own missteps and outdated beliefs had finally caught up with him, leaving him no choice but to step down, his reputation irreparably damaged. Lanning's board members, who had once backed his rigid policies, now looked to Reggie with cautious optimism, recognizing that his leadership would bring the fresh perspective they desperately needed. As the board members shook Reggie's hand and congratulated him, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction and pride. His journey had come full circle, and he was stepping into the role with a clear vision, not to settle scores, but to lead with purpose, compassion, and innovation. Reggie knew that transforming the company would take time, but he was ready to build something meaningful, a legacy grounded in respect and progress. With Lanning's shadow finally fading, Reggie took his place as the new CEO. He stood before the company's employees, many of whom remembered the injustice he'd once faced, and shared his commitment to building a work culture they could be proud of. The path ahead was full of challenges, but Reggie knew he had earned this moment, and that he was ready to guide the company toward a brighter, more inclusive future. Lanning left the boardroom that day, defeated and alone, his influence and reputation left in ruins. But for Reggie, this was only the beginning. A powerful new chapter in a story that had started with hardship but would now be defined by hope, resilience, and transformation. Reggie stepped into the building as CEO for the first time, feeling the weight of both history and purpose. As he made his way through the hallways, he noticed employees glancing up, their faces a mix of surprise, curiosity, and, most significantly, hope. Many of them remembered him from his days working under Lanning, and the sight of him now, back as their leader, was a powerful reminder of how much had changed. Gathering the entire staff in the company's main hall, Reggie took a deep breath before addressing them. Standing at the front, he could see familiar faces in the crowd, people who had witnessed his unjust firing and the toxic culture that had once dominated this place. His return wasn't just a new chapter for him. It was a pivotal moment for everyone in the company. "Thank you all for being here," Reggie began, his voice steady. "I know that many of you remember me from when I used to work here. I came back not only to lead this company, but to change it, to build something better than what we had before." A murmur rippled through the crowd, and Reggie continued, "I won't ignore the past, because what happened here affected all of us. The company's history of exclusion and division is something we have to acknowledge and learn from. My goal is to build a culture of integrity, respect, and true diversity, values that should have been part of this company all along." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "From this day forward, we're going to be a company that values every voice, no matter their background, role, or experience. We're going to move forward with transparency and honesty. And we're going to make this a place where people feel empowered, respected, and proud to work." As he spoke, he noticed nods of agreement and a sense of relief spreading across the room. For some employees, his return felt like justice long overdue. For others, it was a fresh start after years of feeling undervalued and overlooked. Reggie's words weren't just promises. They were the start of a transformative journey, and his presence embodied a new era. With a warm smile, he closed by saying, "I'm here to work with you, not just lead you. Together, we're going to build something meaningful. Let's make this place one we can all be proud of." The crowd broke into applause, some even cheering, and Reggie felt a surge of optimism and unity. His employees were ready to stand by him, to support the new vision he'd brought. They could see in his return a powerful statement of resilience and change, a new chapter led by someone who understood their struggles and believed in a better future. Reggie left the hall feeling more certain than ever. This wasn't just a victory for him. It was a victory for everyone who had been waiting for their voices to matter. The path forward was clear, and he was ready to lead with integrity, compassion, and a determination to make this company an example for the industry. Reggie's first priority as CEO was to transform the company's culture into one that embodied fairness, respect, and opportunity for all. With determination, he began working closely with the HR department, meeting with them to outline a new set of policies that would prioritize inclusivity, equitable treatment, and transparency. Together, they reviewed hiring practices, overhauling outdated systems that had once been designed to keep certain groups on the fringes. Reggie introduced policies that ensured all candidates, regardless of background, had equal opportunities. Job openings were now circulated widely, with a strong emphasis on creating a diverse talent pool. Reggie set measurable diversity goals, establishing regular reviews to make sure progress was transparent and consistent. Beyond hiring, Reggie implemented initiatives that empowered employees from all backgrounds. He created mentorship programs specifically aimed at supporting minority employees, giving them the guidance and resources they needed to advance within the company. These programs connected them with experienced mentors who could help them navigate their careers, providing both professional development and a sense of belonging. One of Reggie's most impactful changes was the introduction of an anonymous feedback system. This gave employees a safe platform to voice concerns, share suggestions, and report any issues without fear of retaliation. Regular town hall meetings became part of the company's culture, allowing Reggie and the leadership team to listen to employees, answer questions, and ensure that everyone felt heard. The changes were swift, and the effect was immediate. Morale began to rise as employees felt seen, valued, and respected for the first time. Teams that had once felt isolated or disconnected now worked together with a renewed sense of purpose. People openly praised the shift, expressing gratitude for the supportive, inclusive environment Reggie was building. Reggie made it a point to empower all employees by fostering an environment where everyone had a seat at the table. Employee resource groups, ERGs, were introduced, allowing employees to connect based on shared experiences and advocate for one another. These groups were encouraged to partner with HR and leadership, ensuring that their voices were integrated into the company's growth strategy. As Reggie walked through the halls, he could see the change in the faces of his employees. The workplace had become brighter, warmer, and filled with camaraderie. His employees greeted him with genuine smiles, their respect and appreciation evident. For the first time, the company felt like a community, a place where every employee could thrive. The shift wasn't just about rebuilding the company. It was about laying a foundation of respect and fairness that would shape its future. Reggie had taken a company once marked by division and turned it into a model of inclusivity and empowerment. And with each passing day, the company's renewed morale proved that change, when driven by integrity, could truly transform lives. Determined to expand the company's positive impact beyond its walls, Reggie launched a series of new initiatives designed to support both the personal and professional growth of his employees and to contribute meaningfully to the community. With each step, he was transforming the company's image and building a foundation that would attract clients and investors who valued ethical business practices. One of Reggie's first initiatives was a mentorship program that paired experienced employees with newer team members, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds. The program focused on professional development, offering guidance, skill building, and networking opportunities. Mentors and ments met regularly, creating bonds that fostered trust and teamwork throughout the organization. Reggie saw the power of these connections firsthand as employees gained confidence, advanced in their roles, and contributed to a supportive culture. Alongside mentorship, Reggie introduced a scholarship program aimed at providing educational opportunities for employees' children and for promising students in the surrounding community. These scholarships were designed to support students pursuing degrees in fields like technology, business, and social work, fields that would not only help the students build their futures, but also inspire them to give back to their communities. The scholarship program was widely celebrated, with applications pouring in from local schools and heartfelt gratitude from employees who saw Reggie's commitment to their families and futures. To further strengthen ties with the community, Reggie established outreach initiatives. The company began partnering with local organizations to offer internships and training programs for young adults, giving them first-hand experience in a professional environment. Reggie's goal was to provide a pathway for those who might not otherwise have had access to these opportunities, helping them build skills, gain confidence, and envision a future in the workforce. These initiatives didn't go unnoticed. Clients, impressed by the company's newfound commitment to social responsibility, began to take an interest in collaborating with a business that prioritized community impact. Investors, drawn to the company's values-driven approach, saw Reggie's changes as not only ethical but financially sound, believing that a business with such integrity would attract loyal customers and sustainable growth. The company's public image transformed from that of a corporate relic to a respected leader in ethical business practices. News outlets began covering the company's efforts, with headlines praising its turnaround and the remarkable story of its CEO who had brought justice, innovation, and compassion to the industry. Reggie's initiatives had done more than regain the public's trust. They had set a standard, demonstrating that a company could be both profitable and principled. The result was a flourishing business built not just on numbers, but on meaningful, lasting connections with its employees, its clients, and its community. For Reggie, this was more than success. It was the realization of his vision. A company with a purpose, inspiring positive change both inside and out. One evening, after a long day filled with meetings and new initiatives, Reggie found himself alone in his office, the once intimidating space now filled with a quiet sense of fulfillment. As he looked out over the city lights, he took a moment to let the weight of his journey settle around him. He thought back to that fateful day when he had been fired by Richard Lanning, dismissed and humiliated, uncertain of his future and filled with frustration. Back then, he could never have imagined that this very office would one day be his. nor that he would transform the company's legacy in a way that felt both personal and profound. He remembered the struggle of those first months, taking on odd jobs to support his family and facing rejection after rejection. It had been a test of his resilience, but he now saw those hardships as the foundation for the person he had become. Each setback had only strengthened his resolve, and each moment of doubt had taught him the power of perseverance. Reggie's mind drifted to the people who had been with him through it all, his family, who had believed in him unconditionally, his friends who had cheered him on, and his community, which had rallied around him with support and pride. He felt a surge of gratitude, recognizing that he hadn't walked this path alone. Their faith in him had been his anchor, keeping him steady even when the road seemed impossible. With a quiet smile, Reggie acknowledged how far he had come, not just in terms of business success, but in the purpose he had found along the way. The company's transformation was more than a personal victory. It was a symbol of his commitment to change, his refusal to accept injustice, and his dedication to creating something meaningful. He knew now that his journey had been about more than proving his worth. It had been about setting a new standard for leadership, one that placed integrity, respect, and community at its core. Reggie leaned back in his chair, feeling a deep sense of pride. He had turned pain into purpose, and through that transformation, he had created a legacy that would inspire others for years to come. The path hadn't been easy, but he wouldn't have changed a single step. In the silence of his office, Reggie understood that his story wasn't just his own. It was a testament to resilience, a reminder that with vision and courage, anyone could turn adversity into lasting change. With renewed resolve, he looked forward to the future, knowing that his journey was far from over. He had built something that would outlast him, something that would carry his values forward, and he felt ready to continue leading with the strength and compassion that had brought him this far. As Reggie's success continued to grow, Richard Lanning found himself facing a starkly different reality. Once a powerful figure in the industry, he was now a man tarnished by scandal and left adrift by his own actions. His former company, the empire he had built and clung to so fiercely, had been reshaped and revitalized under Reggie's leadership, its values completely transformed. And in the process, Lanning's own legacy had been left in the dust, a casualty of his outdated beliefs and discriminatory practices. Lanning attempted to find work, reaching out to old contacts and former associates, but his reputation followed him wherever he went. The story of his treatment of Reggie had become industry lore, and his dismissal of Reggie's talent and worth in favor of prejudice was no secret. Prospective employers were wary, unwilling to associate with a man whose past actions had not only cost him his position but had also jeopardized an entire company. His once powerful connections had begun to distance themselves, reluctant to align with a man whose values now felt out of step with the forward-thinking industry. As he watched Reggie's continued success, Lanning couldn't escape the bitter irony. The very man he had dismissed and belittled had risen to take his place, transforming what he had once viewed as his personal legacy into a symbol of resilience, integrity, and progress. Lanning's own downfall served as a stark reminder of how quickly power could slip away when integrity was sacrificed. Reggie's story had become a beacon in the business world, celebrated for its message of triumph over adversity and the enduring strength of resilience. In industry circles, conferences, and articles, Reggie's name was held up as a model of ethical leadership, while Lanning served as a cautionary tale. In the end, Reggie's rise overshadowed Lanning's downfall, casting a long shadow over Lanning's legacy and a powerful lesson over the industry. For Reggie, Lanning's struggle served as a quiet reminder of the importance of values and the impact that true integrity could have. He knew that his success wasn't just about reclaiming what had been taken from him. It was about creating a legacy built on respect and purpose, a legacy that stood as a testament to the transformative power of resilience and a commitment to justice. And for Lanning, it was the starkest reminder of all. In a world that valued progress, integrity would always be stronger than prejudice. As Reggie's company flourished under his leadership, the industry took note, not only of its impressive growth but of the core values that had become woven into every facet of its operations. The once overlooked startup had transformed into a model of innovation, inclusivity, and social responsibility. Recognizing these achievements, Industry organizations began to honor Reggie and his company with prestigious awards, a testament to his vision and the journey that had led him here. At the annual Business Excellence Gala, Reggie's company was awarded Most Innovative Company of the Year, with judges applauding its trailblazing products and the bold, forward-thinking strategies Reggie had implemented. He was invited on stage to accept the award, and as he stood before the audience, an audience that included many leaders and peers who had once overlooked or dismissed him, he felt an overwhelming sense of pride. Reggie spoke humbly about the power of persistence, sharing how his own journey from adversity to success had been fueled by a commitment to change, both within the company and in the broader industry. The accolades didn't stop there. Reggie was later recognized with the Leadership and Social Responsibility Award, commending his dedication to building a company where integrity, diversity, and community impact were prioritized. The mentorship programs, scholarships, and outreach initiatives he'd launched had already begun making a tangible difference, not only within his company but in the lives of countless individuals. News outlets and business publications hailed his efforts as a model for ethical business practices, writing feature stories on how Reggie had transformed the industry standard for what a company could and should be. Colleagues and competitors alike reached out to Reggie, some offering their congratulations, others seeking his advice and perspective. His journey had inspired countless others, from rising entrepreneurs to seasoned executives, who saw in Reggie's story a powerful example of resilience, justice, and vision. Industry leaders openly praised him, some acknowledging that his journey had challenged them to rethink their own approaches to leadership and success. As Reggie accepted each award and recognition, he remained grounded, aware that these achievements were not just his own but a reflection of the dedicated team who had helped build this new legacy. Together, they had shown that true success wasn't just about profits or status. It was about making a lasting impact, one that resonated with employees, clients, and the community alike. Reggie's position as a respected leader in the industry was solidified, and his comeback story became part of industry lore, a reminder of the power of integrity and the strength that could be found in adversity. His success was no longer a statement of personal redemption but a beacon of possibility, proving that with resilience, purpose, and an unyielding commitment to values, true change was possible. Sitting across from the interviewer in a bright, modern studio, Reggie reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. The cameras rolled as he spoke openly, his voice calm yet powerful, sharing his story with an audience that spanned far beyond the boardroom. Looking back, Reggie began, "I can say that losing my job was one of the hardest things I've ever been through. It was painful, and at the time, it felt like my world was falling apart. But sometimes, the toughest challenges lead us to the most important lessons. Adversity can be a stepping stone, an opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more resilient." The interviewer leaned forward, captivated. "What would you say has been the most important lesson from your experience?" Reggie paused thoughtfully. "The most important lesson has been the power of perseverance and integrity," he answered. "When things fall apart, it's easy to lose hope, to feel like you're defeated. But when you hold on to who you are, your values, your vision, and keep pushing forward, even in the face of rejection, you can accomplish things you never imagined." He shared moments from his journey, describing the transition from loss to resilience, the hard work of building a new path, and the fulfillment of standing up for what was right, even when it felt impossible. "People doubted me. Some even tried to discourage me," he continued. "But I realized that no one defines your path but you. When you choose to believe in yourself, when you stay true to what you stand for, you can overcome even the steepest obstacles." The interviewer nodded, moved by Reggie's words. "What would you say to those watching, especially people who might be facing their own struggles right now?" Reggie smiled, his gaze direct and encouraging. "I would say to keep going. Don't let setbacks break your spirit. Adversity isn't the end. It's just part of the journey. Believe in yourself, stand up for what you know is right, and trust that the path you're on can lead to something greater. Every obstacle can be a stepping stone, and every hardship can become a chapter in your story. You have the power to create a legacy of your own." As the interview concluded, Reggie's message resonated, his words carrying the weight of lived experience and hard-won wisdom. The audience saw in him not just a successful CEO, but a man who had turned pain into purpose, transforming adversity into a story of strength, integrity, and positive change. With his journey laid out before the world, Reggie left the studio with a sense of peace. He had shared his story not to prove a point, but to inspire others, to remind them that every challenge could become a stepping stone to something extraordinary. And as he walked forward, Reggie knew that his legacy wasn't just in the company he had built, but in the courage, resilience, and integrity that he hoped would inspire generations to come.
I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. Thank you.